doing this. And then around the week. Well, here's Dr. David Cusack, Eric Marcus for most everything, and it's good to see Chris back today. Yeah. And Beth Headworker's not with us today. Want to thank Mark Weinstein, Mike's Wake and Bales for the programs, and Jim Gunn for the website. Again, they're available. Communication. Back here, right? Get my feet, but I'm not sure.
Well, good afternoon. Would you join me in prayer? Oh, Holy Creator, we have many things to be thankful for. And one of them is being a Rotarian. I'm thankful for our Rotary leaders who unselfishly give of themselves and guide us always. I'm thankful for the friendships that are made here as we work together. I'm thankful to be among Rotarians who have different faiths, goals, all still working for the same goal. Any program inspire us. What it is a great work. I'm thankful for dinner by others. I'm thankful for that happiness is shared by other Rotarians as we weekly reminder to think about what I'm happy about. I'm thankful for being a Rotarian who is reminded that in our busy and sometimes self-concerned that service of the Lord is a wonderful motto to try to live by. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, sir. Secretary's report, Joe Jenkins.
We're at 60% today.
My first time attending, I'd like to join. Give him an application.
Yeah. Okay.
I look forward to meeting all of you. David, I'm a candidate for Green County County School Judge in 2026. And just look forward to getting to know each of you and being a deserving member of the club. You know, right, you're gonna be a contributing member right away because that's a $5 fine. So,
Yeah.
this week, that's it.
Jay. Oh, then Amanda or Abby. He's here.
Abby's here.
Yeah.
All right, Chris Allen, right? So, good. You won't get carried with. He's back.
All right. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, and hello again to our guests and our long-term Rotarian apprentice, Abby, and of course, our incredible speaker who will be up here shortly. And welcome again to the April 20th of the Rotary Club Hug a Plumber Day. And while they may not want to have the hug mid-job, they definitely do deserve our gratitude. I've heard these superheroes tend to wear tool belts instead of capes, especially when working on clean water projects. Little plug for our clean water project. Moving on to some birthdays and anniversaries. Not a lot coming up this week, but some big ones. We got Dan Tobias celebrating his birthday on the 27th. We have Mike Zwick celebrating his Rotarian anniversary on the 1st of May. He will be celebrating 41 years. And James Gundel on the same day will be here, so being a Rotarian with us. Moving on some good things that happened this day in history. Going back to 1940, the very first issue of the DC comic series Batman hit the newsstands. That number one, or the first issue featured his sidekick, Boy Wonder Robin, also featured Joker and Catwoman. And fun fact, a copy of this comic recently, well, not recently, back in 2021, sold at an auction for just $2.2 million.
Wow.
Moving on to 1994, the United Negro College Fund was incorporated. 1946 is a big day for Italy, as today's their Liberation Day. And this one is right up Jason's alley, who unfortunately isn't here, but Bell Labs finished the first functional solar cell with the intention to power satellites in space where they don't have to change their batteries. And now it seems like solar panels are popping up everywhere. So that's a pretty nice adventure, especially for the power savings for us. Moving on to some things to celebrate starting tomorrow. And this one you can celebrate at your own risk. It is Remember Your First Kiss Day. It is also Celebrate Trails Day. Obviously, a big shout out to our Parks and Recreation Division, all the volunteers that put time and effort into keeping our trails nice and neat. Moving on to Sunday, we have National Pet Parents Day and also National Little Camper Dog Day. Monday is National Superhero Day. And then for all those people who have been told to return to the office already, they'll be celebrating National Cubicle Day. Tuesday is Viral Video Day, and can anyone guess what is the most watched video on YouTube is? Well, as of yesterday, with 15,839,666,797 views in just over 8 years, it's that really catchy song.
Jeez.
And I will admit, I probably have a handful of those views thanks to my little guy, Big Joe, and everyone else who's had a little one in the last 8 years have been subject to that video. Also, Tuesday is National Zipper Day. Very important invention there. Wednesday, it says that the 30th is Golf Day, but I think we all know the real golf day is May 16th, right here at Beavercreek Golf Club. It is also National Honesty Day, used car salesman's favorite day. Thursday is the start of the new month, which brings millions of new celebrations like Skin Cancer Awareness Month. The future Wayne Gretzky, aka Stephen Brown, will definitely be enjoying National Photography Month. Beth, your people will probably be busy for National Get Caught Reading Month. It's also Small Business Month, Better Speech and Language Month, which I don't think our high school speech and debate team needs any of that. It is also Local and Community History Month. Shout out to the Beavercreek Historical Society. 8-Year Mate Month, which I think if you ask all your spouses, that would be every day, every month, not just 1 month of the year. It's also National Pet Month and National Military Appreciation Month. Thursday also kicks off International Sunflower Guerrilla Gardening Day. I don't know what that is, but it sounds pretty intense. It's also New Homeowners Day, and rumor has it that Greta by the Creek is a solid follow on Facebook. She was here, I think she would agree. Also, it is Wall Day, which could be a good or bad day for Dave Cusack and Brian Lampett, depending on what people they encounter on that day and the questions that they have. And you can also tell that summer is near because there are thousands of things popping up. So if I don't include one of the events that you're heading to or being a part of, feel free to announce it during announcements later or during Happy Bucks. But today we kick off a spring fling carnival over at the Fairfield Commons Mall. Also tonight kicks off Bellbrook's Sugar Maple Festival. Tomorrow morning, our friends at Violence Free Futures will have their superhero 5K starting at 9 a.m. And our friends at the Beavercreek Police Department will be participating in Love Tech Day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then, of course, there's the Soar into Spring at Dominic Calafino Park from 11 to 1, unless you're helping out, might be a little earlier or later. Going on to Thursday, one of our recent speakers, Rachel Bain, her nonprofit, the Sunshine Book Club, will be hosting a party purpose fundraiser at Bennett's Public School in Miamisburg from 6 to 8. Tons of info, prices, and all that can be found on Facebook. The high school's annual art show will be in the auxiliary gym from 5:30 to 7:30 at night. And now we have all heard and talked about how much we want to see UD and Wright State play, and that will finally be happening for baseball at Day Air Park at 7 p.m. Moving on to some beer student awesomeness. It's going to be a little biased to start this one off first. Caden Ellerby set the Eastern Relays meet record in the 400-meter race with a 47.12 time. Baseball varsity beat Fairmont 3-1. JV beat Fairmont 6-1. Varsity girls lacrosse unfortunately lost to Springboro 10-9. But boys varsity lacrosse beat Springboro 14-6. Middle school girls lacrosse unfortunately lost to Minesburg 8-5. And varsity softball team lost to Fairmont 13-3. But our boys varsity team went perfect 5-0 against Fairmont and 5-0 against Tippecanoe as well. Now, before I get started on our fines, I do want to thank everyone that helped. And definitely want to issue an open invite. If anybody ever wants to step up and take over for a week, definitely let me know. Or want to have a little fun and swap out the jokes, we can do that as well. Just give me a little bit of heads up and we'll make it happen. And now, since it's been a while, part of me wants to set the record for most fines or most things charged for a fine. But for the sake of time, I will just do a few quick ones here. We have the standard, if you're not wearing your badge, that's $1. If you're late, I'm not going to call out the person since he had the big membership anniversary coming up. That'll be $1. If you've ever willingly or unwillingly listened to Baby Shark, that's $1. If you've ever told a lie, that's $1. If you have never ran a lap around a 400-meter track under 50 seconds, that'll be $1. And this last one, hate to do it, but if you're wearing something that has a zipper, that's $1. Done. Time for happy bucks.
Well, you got to answer your orders. Let's just collecting that, happy bucks. Who's having? Yeah, thank you.
10 volunteers that helped on Monday clean up Dominic and Pino Park in preparation of tomorrow's event.
My son's performing tonight at Dayton Dragons game if it doesn't get rained out. But probably.
Eric,
Happy Bucket, since they're running on track today, we happen to be at Beavercreek High School tomorrow watching the little kids run, the middle schoolers. My young granddaughter is running the 4x40 for West Carrollton schools. I don't know what school she goes to. They're middle school.
yeah, well,
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yeah, like me, Tom, I got all three of those things. Also, I need a little bit of help here. I did help Honey with the park, and I was graciously glad to help bring the beanbag game tomorrow. I've got to leave for Texas unexpectedly, so if somebody beat me out in the parking lot after today, and I've got the beanbags and game for the kids. If you can get that to the park tomorrow, I would really appreciate it. But if not, I'll find somebody to do the racing. So, thanks. It's good.
Happy 5/30. I'm Sergeant Armfield, and remember that Disney was Western Line 5828. Congratulations.
and I thank Chris Osteen for that one.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Oh, for those of you who have insomnia, you can log on early in the morning on the London Marathon app and watch Brendan's times.
Oh, yeah, sorry, but I mean, really? Yeah, what time was that?
4 o'clock.
Oh, let's say that. Oh, that.
Nice. That's why I said you need to have insomnia.
Sure. All right. Take a drive.
That's fabulous.
What's his last name?
So I've been going for a while. We've got a few things that happened to our household. I also celebrated a wedding anniversary recently.
Ooh.
We had Elias who transitioned to a that all was a huge thing and almost potty trained. So huge things are here.
That's huge. So, anyone else? All right, we'll do the chicken girls. Since we're half the proceeds of this go to our Christmas basket program, the other half goes to Joe Jenkins or David Kuzak. Which are many I've been the last couple of 2 years. Number 136 107. Well.
So, yeah. And more people, and so always with all us, you know.
We're looking for the close. Don't think that's the 10 clubs. Mark Rose. All right, any announcements for the club? I'll just got a couple more, district meals coming up tonight. Hopefully you signed up for that. If not, I think it should be a good night. I think the last number I heard from Dottie is like 178 people going to be there. And there's gonna be a lot of kids there too, because they're gonna be, I don't know what exactly the program is, but they'll be doing something with that. Soaring into spring tomorrow. And let's try to support that. The golf outing, anything on the golf outing, Dave? Because you got your mouth full.
Sorry, we continue to look for more golfers or sponsors. Things are picking up. And also, you don't want to be either. Let me know if you can volunteer on the day to do some of the administrative stuff. Or provide door press.
And an easy link for anybody that wants to either pay for a sponsorship by credit card or sign up to golf is t.ly/capital Beaver, capital Beavercreek, capital golf.
Send that out on email. Just send that out on email.
I'm sending it out.
Okay, very good.
Clean out, please. Sign up online and pay by credit card.
Jim, Rudd, you have anything on place for yours you want to bring up?
Not really, we're still, if you want to sponsor some hiking road, and you're still looking for some additions,
And when do you plan to put those out?
I'll send it out.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Who's this out? Speaker. Somebody we all know. David Hayes was elected to the position of Greene County Prosecuting Attorney in November of 2020 and was reelected to a second term in November 2024. He began his career in the Greene County Prosecutor's Office Assistant Prosecuting Attorney on November 1st, 2004 in the Child Support Enforcement Division. David became a felony docket prosecutor in September of 2005, and since that time, David has prosecuted over 2,500 felony cases and conducted over 60 jury trials. There may be more by now, sorry to say. So, going through everything I wrote here, but David did retire after 24-year career in the United States Air Force. He started out as reserve, as enlisted, jumped the ranks, retired as a captain with the Judge Advocate Corps. So, without further ado, our speaker, David Hayes.
Aaron, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I looked at a job that I ever had my entire career was being first sergeant in the United States Air Force. Spectacular. Helping the commander maintain good order and discipline and getting to work with young airmen. Sometimes is more rewarding than prosecuting felons. So, but in order of importance, let me see. My jobs go like this: husband, father, veteran, lawyer. But lawyer is what you're stuck with today. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So first of all, it's an honor and privilege to be your prosecuting attorney. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group always. And so I'm going to,
Is it working?
It's working. Yeah.
It's on there.
Yeah, it's on.
It's working in the computer, not the screen.
Did you do that?
No, you did, I did it, and then you went back.
There we go. All right. So let's bring you a roadmap as to where we're going. So today we're going to talk about overall criminal trends from 2021 to present. And we're going to see these from the number of type of felony offenses that are charged by the prosecutor's office. Then I'm going to talk to you about jurisdictional trend lines from 2021 to present. And I'm going to focus on the 4 largest jurisdictions here in Greene County. Then we're going to transition over to some changes in criminal law in 2025. And then lastly, I'm going to talk to you about what I consider to be a dangerous threat to public safety that is on the horizon. I don't think it's what you think it might be. But very brief of the criminal charges, but this is not intended to insult, it's to set stage for where we go. So the first thing that happens is somebody commits a crime. Second thing that happens is the police investigate it. The next thing that happens is the officer will bring the charges, they'll bring the evidence to the prosecutor's office, we'll review it, and we'll make a determination as to whether or not there's sufficient probable cause to proceed forward with the charge. If they are approved, they are presented to the grand jury. And if they are not approved, they are declined. They are either completely declined because we don't think a crime was committed, or they are sent back to the police with a request to get more evidence with regard to the requested charge. Then the cases are assigned to assistant prosecutors who handle the case. Now, because I knew I had a very short period of time, I wanted to focus only on a small category of cases. These cases are gun cases, drug cases, both possession and trafficking offenses. Trafficking, of course, is selling drugs. Child abuse cases, sexual assault cases, domestic or intimate partner violence cases, finally, homicide cases. So I focused on these because, frankly, these take up most of the time of my assistant prosecutors. So that's where I wanted to focus my attention. So there are, for those of you who are statisticians or mathematicians, I am not. And I will readily acknowledge that there are some limitations on the data is that these are raw numbers of charged offenses. So the criminal justice process starts with a criminal charge. It ends with a conviction or an acquittal. That's how it works. So this is all in the front end. This is what we charge at the prosecutor's office. It's not where cases ultimately end up. Secondly, some cases are going to fall into multiple categories. All right. You're going to see gun cases that have been broken apart from drug cases, but very often drug dealers, drug traffickers are in possession of guns when they are arrested and charged. So there is a bit of an overlap. And I did exclude property crimes from the crimes we're going to take a look at. Now, I do hope everybody brought their glasses, because these may be very small when they appear on the screen. This occurs to me. So, the total number of felony filings going from 2021 to 2025. In 2021, we had 673 felony filings. That number dipped considerably in 2022 down to 601. That number jumped again to 668, and last year went up to 708. I can tell you in the 20 years that I've been prosecuting, or pardon me, 23 years that I've been prosecuting, the most cases that we have ever filed in any given year has been a little close to 1,200. It's 1,198 cases. And that was in the mid-2000s. Now, what happened in 2000 and 2021 that impacted felony filings? There's a couple things, of course. COVID, number one, fewer people were out. Fewer stores were open. Fewer things were happening. And then one of the most significant impacts on the number of felony filings is the number of police officers who are on the street, because they're directly related to each other. The more police officers you have, the more crime is rooted out, the more charges come to my office. So there was a time period, I don't know if you know this, but every single jurisdiction in Greene County, frankly, across the state and across the country, is having a great difficulty hiring police officers right now. And that's in large part because of the public perception of police officers. There are certain segments of the media and other areas, academia, that have some disdain for law enforcement officers, and that gets manifested and frankly is communicated to young people. And mid-40s is not a target demographic for hiring at the police department. They're looking for early 20s. And people in their early 20s are not particularly attracted to police work these days or to being a prosecutor. I always tell people that I'm in the accountability business, and the accountability business is not very popular these days, especially among young people. But we're going to work hard to change that. So, I don't know if you can read that, but this is just the categories that we see. So what do you think is the biggest one, even if you don't have your glasses? Drugs, that's right. Drugs, and I tell this every time that I talk to any civic group, drugs are the oxygen that fuels the criminal justice system. Without the desire to get drugs, the number of crimes significantly reduces. And of course, in the state of Ohio, simply possessing most drugs is by itself a crime. Now, we've changed that with regards to marijuana over the years, but every other drug that you think of, be it heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, these are all still felonies, and they are all still charged as crimes. And one of the things I can tell you is that the criminal justice system writ large has struggled, and I would say, and Judge, I'd ask you to give me your thoughts on this, has struggled, I'd say, over the past 20 years as to how best to deal with possession type crimes in particular. And I know that the Fairborn Municipal Court has a drug court that the judge uses to try to get people away from criminal justice and into treatment, which is a laudable goal. But that seems to be directly in contravention to what I just mentioned. So there's still felony crimes. So the legislature still designates them as felony crimes, which are serious crimes. But we all recognize that addiction is a disease. So the criminal justice system tries to balance those things out. But again, you're going to see this as a theme throughout this presentation. Drug crimes pretty much are our bread and butter as far as our numbers are concerned. Next highest you'll see are domestic violence cases and gun cases. And I'm happy to report that sexual assault and homicide cases are low here in Greene County. That doesn't mean they don't happen, of course, but they happen a lot less than other types of offenses. So let's get to jurisdiction. I'm going to start with Xenia. So the 4 jurisdictions that I selected is the Greene County Sheriff's Office, which is every unincorporated part of the county. So you have municipalities, we have other incorporated areas, including villages. And the Sheriff's Office does provide enforcement in some of the villages as well. But again, you'll see here that with regard to Xenia, domestic violence, drug, this is the number that I want you to keep an eye on. So this is how far the bar goes up. And so they become important as we go through the jurisdictions. So here we're looking at 80. Low system resources may affect your audio quality, Eric. So you have 80 here. So again, the trend lines are about the same. And you'll see that throughout most of these with one exception. So again, gun cases, drug cases, child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, and homicide are the types of crimes that we're talking about. And you'll see, again, in 2024, everything mostly went up with the exception of domestic violence in the city of Xenia. This is the sheriff's office. So again, I told you with Xenia, this number was 80 over here. All right, we're down to 20. That's as high as we're going with the sheriff's office. And I think what's showing this is, and it's pretty self-evident that most of the crime that we get occurs in the municipalities, especially Beavercreek, Fairborn, and Xenia, because they are the most populated parts of Greene County. You have more people, you have more crime. It's a pretty simple equation. But again, the one constant are drug offenses. And that's true for every jurisdiction that we have here in Greene County. Now, here's the number I want you to look at. We've already gone up to 180 over here. So we're 80 for Xenia, we're 20 for the sheriff's office. We are at 180 for Fairborn. Fairborn provides more felony filing jurisdiction in Greene County. There's a couple reasons for that. It's obvious because there's population. Its proximity to parts of Montgomery County and the ease of access from getting to Montgomery, from Montgomery County to Fairborn, specifically 444 Route 4, 675, just to distinguish it a little bit from Beavercreek. But I think the other reason is a demographic reason, which is Fairborn is a much more transient community. By that, I mean they have much more transition and turnover with regard to their resident population. They have a lot of apartments, they have a lot of house rentals. So you don't have people who are anchored in the community the same way that you do in, let's say, Beavercreek, or I think even more clearly in places like Cedarville or Yellow Springs, where people have been there generationally. You just don't have that as much in Fairborn. You still have people who have had families in Fairborn for quite some time. And I'm not saying any of this disparage Fairborn. My wife and I made our first home in Fairborn. My mother-in-law still lives in Fairborn. So, but Fairborn is our biggest customer. And again, I want you to see these drug cases, which spikes to 157 in 2021, goes down a little bit, and then spikes again in 2024. But the big number that you can't really see is sexual assaults. So Fairborn provides more sexual assaults than any other jurisdiction. And I don't know why that is. I wouldn't even care to speculate. Again, I link it mostly to the population than to anything else, the size of the population, not the character of the people. And so please don't misunderstand. And I knew you want to find out about Beavercreek. So here we are. Beavercreek is at 35. So again, we go from 30 to 20 to 180. I'm sorry, 80, 20, 180, now at 35. So Beavercreek does have a problem that is endemic to every place in Greene County, which is domestic violence. Luckily, we do not have a lot of homicides in Beavercreek, but that did change in 2024. We did have 2 homicides in the city of Creek. But the number of sexual assaults is steady at 0. Again, these are not reported offenses. These are charged crimes. All right, I want to make sure you understand that. But again, drugs. If there's anything that we could do about crime, it relates to drugs. If there's a way, we had a way to crack that nut to fix that problem, I wouldn't be here because my job would not be necessary. Now, just to put it in perspective, blue is, take your guess, Fairborn. So of those cases that I talked about, these are the felony filings from Fairborn, and they amount to 52% of the cases that we charge at the Greene County Prosecutor's Office. You'll notice that the Sheriff's Office is at 8%. Beavercreek is at 12%, and Xenia is at 28%. And although this does not include all of the property crimes that I mentioned were excluded from the data, this chart fairly accurately tracks the universe of charged cases and the percentages that come from each jurisdiction. Now, we had, and again, this only includes the data that I've included. So we do have felony cases that come from Sugar Creek and Bellbrook. We do have felony cases that come from Yellow Springs. We do have, actually, most of the homicides that we prosecuted over the past 4 years have come from Yellow Springs, as opposed to any other communities in the county. So we do have to those communities. Does anybody have any questions about any of this data? And Judge, do you have any perspective on this from the bench?
My only comment is how you see for drug offenses in Beavercreek. What you're not seeing is how many thefts are in Beavercreek that are drug driven. And so for us, Beavercreek is disproportionately high for theft offenses. Conservatively, at least 90% of those are probably drug related, meaning they're stealing to help their drug addiction and feed that. So when you see a low possession rate, I would not give you too much of a false sense of security with that, because you do have a lot of issues with people in the community who are using and stealing.
And I want you to keep in mind, Judge Capelli is a judge in the Fairborn Municipal Court, and they prosecute misdemeanors. The misdemeanors originate at Fairborn Municipal. So if somebody's charged with a theft crime of less than $1,000, that's the office that we prosecute, not the Greene County Prosecutor's Office. We prosecute felony offenses over $1,000. But the judge is absolutely right about one thing. The best way to think about criminals is that they are not evil people. All right. 99% of criminals are not evil people. They are not unredeemable. They just make extraordinarily bad decisions. And the best way to they live in the ever constant present. That's the best way to describe it. They need something, they need it right now, and they're gonna do whatever they have to do to get it, and that might include stealing somebody else's property. Sir,
Explain a gun case number compared to how so few homicides.
well, a gun case, most of the gun cases that we get are not gun cases where a gun is used in a crime. Most of the gun cases that we get, believe it or not, are still related to the improper handling of a firearm. So we know that the legislature got rid of the requirement for carrying a concealed weapon license. All right, so you no longer have to have a license to carry a concealed weapon. However, there are still restrictions on your ability to carry a firearm, and one of the most significant. So this is, I think, an important public policy. We don't want drunk people with guns, and we certainly don't want drunk people with guns driving a car or being under the influence. And I can't tell you how often that happens. Most of the gun cases that we have prosecuted that fall into this category are of that type. So somebody's driving, they pull over for OBI, the officer discovers a gun in the car, and that's a felony offense.
Drug cases, is there a particular drug in general that you think is driving the numbers?
Well, the best way to answer that is that methamphetamine is probably what we charge more often than anything else. But fentanyl is everywhere. It is ubiquitous. It is cut with almost everything. So we will find fentanyl almost, I'd say probably 75% of the drugs that are tested, even though the drug is primarily made up of, let's say, methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin. There is fentanyl drug. And I think that that's in part to get people more addicted to the drug so they'll come back. And it is in part because it's a lot cheaper. Fentanyl is a lot cheaper to get than some of the other drugs. But I will tell you what is making a comeback, which we haven't seen in quite some time, is cocaine. We're seeing cocaine come back. And these things do ebb and flow. When I first started in the prosecutor's office, public enemy number one were homegrown meth labs. And I don't know if you remember that. That was all over the media, it was all over everything. You'd have cops show up with hazmat suits on, and they'd have to clear out, and they'd have to clear out houses with methamphetamine from the homemade meth. Now meth is much more standardized, it's much more lab created. We hardly ever, I can't even tell you the last time I prosecuted a homemade meth case, just because it is so easy to process and to distribute now in pill form. Has that answered your question? What time? Want to make sure I get to my
38.
30. All right. 50. So, any other questions about that, sir?
How does Green County compare with Montgomery?
There's no way to compare it. There's no way to compare it.
No, it's.
I don't know the numbers, so I've never seen the numbers. I can only speak anecdotally.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you that in the Greene County Prosecutor's Office, we have 14 lawyers. In the Montgomery County Prosecutors, they have 70+ lawyers. And I don't think they have some insight. The Dayton Police Department, how many officers do they have? 300+?
Yeah.
300+ easy. In the Fairmont Police Department, maybe 45. And that's the busiest jurisdiction in Greene County. Sir?
Yeah, with respect to the gun cases, has that number increased when the mandate was taken away for CCW, where it's no longer required?
No, I'd say it probably has gone down. Only because before it was a crime to have a concealed weapon and not have a license. So it's not anymore. So the first thing that an officer will do if they encounter somebody with a gun, obviously, is make sure they're safe. Make sure the officer's safe. They'll check and see, it's going to be presumed by most police officers the person's lawfully in possession, unless the investigation suggests that they are not lawfully in possession. All right, so that's the numbers, that's the trend lines, and the trend lines hold pretty steady. Drug crimes are going to continue to be what they are. The most important thing for reducing the numbers of child abuse cases, sexual assault cases, domestic violence cases is frankly just education. And it's really about prevention. For sexual assaults in particular, don't put yourself in a position where you can be victimized. That of course doesn't apply to children. Because children don't really have a choice. But April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I always tell people the same thing. If you ever see a child that you think is in distress, say something. Say something to somebody in a position of authority and get them help. All right. So let's transition to topic number 2, which are significant changes in the criminal law in 2025. This list is not exhaustive, but these are the things that I wanted to highlight. The first is what's called Brady's Law, which makes sexual extortion a felony offense carrying up to 36 months. Now, the reason that they had to pass this law is because there was a young man who was 14 years old, and he was communicating with somebody online that he thought was a young girl his own age. He was in fact a grown man. And that grown man tricked Braden into sending, or encouraged Braden to send photographs, naked photographs, and then threatened to make a video and to put those photographs out on the internet unless he was paid $2,000. And Braden, within 30 minutes of that communication, Braden took his own life. And that is the reason that the legislature decided to act. So, sexual extortion extortion is, of course, threatening somebody in an effort to get something. Sexual extortion is specific to threatening to use sexually oriented material to get the person to do something, usually to pay money. So that's something that you want to keep an eye on. And of course, I'm not a young man. I'm not an old man, but I'm not a young man. And so I don't live entirely, my wife might disagree with me, but I don't live entirely on my phone. Young people do. I mean, young people are just consumed with their phone, with social media, the way that they connect with other people. So they are especially susceptible to these types of crimes, and they're also susceptible to other types of crimes. Next is aggravated vehicular homicide, which has always been, in my estimation, the penalty has been way too low for aggravated vehicular homicide. Oh, thank you. Is it getting raspy? That's the message right there. Thank you. All right, so an aggravated vehicular homicide case is distinct from a homicide case in the sense that it happens when somebody's driving a car and they either act recklessly or they are under the influence and there's a crash. And as a result of that, somebody dies. And the person who dies can either be in the car of the person who is committing the crime, or it can be in another vehicle, or of course it could be just some poor passerby who's walking along the street. And having prosecuted many of these cases, and if you're talking to a mother who has lost their 18-year-old son or daughter, and you tell them that the person who was driving had a blood alcohol level of 0.12, and you tell them that the most that this person can go to prison for is 8 years, no matter what happens. That's the most they can go to prison for. You kind of see the light go out of their eyes a little bit and try to explain to them that that's just the way the law is. So the legislature, they didn't make it serious enough as far as I'm concerned, but they did recognize that if you're a person who is driving drunk and caused the death of another person, we're going to ask, have you ever been convicted of driving drunk before? And if you have been, we're going to make this a more serious crime. We're going to make it a felony of the first degree, and we're going to have mandatory prison time connected to that offense. Wow. So that's a change. Penalty for third-degree domestic violence. So domestic violence crimes they're difficult to prosecute. And I'll tell you they're difficult to prosecute because 80% of the time, the victim either becomes non-communicative or becomes outright hostile to the prosecution. So, but the legislature keeps ramping up the penalties. So it used to be a maximum of 36 months in prison. Now it's a maximum of 60 months in prison. And lastly, the defendant who enters an Alford plea cannot be punished more harshly for not expressing remorse. So you've already know what an Alford plea is. An Alford plea, there's guilty, there's not guilty, there's no contest, which means I'm going to agree with the facts, but I'm not going to admit liability. And an Alford plea is just, listen, I didn't do it, but the punishment is so severe that I'm going to say I did it for the purpose of getting a lower punishment. That's an Alford plea. So it used to be that a judge could say, even under those circumstances, if you're not remorseful, I'm going to give you more time in prison. And judges can't do that anymore. They can't go into whether or not somebody is remorseful. All right. This is one of the things I really want to talk about. This is my PSA persuasive portion of my presentation. Oh, my wife's telling me I need to walk around. Apparently I'm not keeping it. This is why I love her so much. So, I'm gonna walk around. Qualified immunity. I don't know if you know this, but there is a ballot initiative that's being introduced to amend the Ohio Constitution. The Constitution, not the law, Constitution, that seeks to terminate qualified immunity and other types of immunity. And I want to talk to you about what that is, and I want to tell you why that's a bad idea. Qualified immunity, what is it? Well, it's a judicially created legal principle, and it grants government officials immunity from lawsuits for damages unless the plaintiff can show that the official violated what's called clearly established statutory or constitutional rights that the person should have known that they were violating. All right?
Layman's term,
I'm sorry?
layman's term.
No, I'll give you examples, real world examples. It's a doctrine that applies to all government officials, but here's the most important thing. It's most commonly litigated regarding police. So this is about the police. I want to make sure you understand that because the thrust to get rid of it relates back to perceived police misconduct. So this is the impending threat to public safety. So just to give you just a little bit of background, what time is it? I'll make sure I'm close.
47.
Okay. Just to give you a little background, this came about because of the Nixon era. So somebody got fired from the Department of the Air Force by a couple of Nixon's aides, and he filed suit claiming he was wrongfully terminated. Supreme Court said, well, you know, if you're an off-government official who's exercising a discretionary function, we're going to give you liability if you don't violate clearly established statutory constitutional rights that you should have known about. And the court concluded the court didn't determine what liability was in this case. It just made that rule. Now, that rule quickly went out to the states and applied to other federal laws. So let me give you the example. So this is qualified immunity in action. Scott versus Columbus. It's obviously an Ohio case, 2001. The police get a call about a burglary. They arrive on scene and they see a man walking away from the location of the burglary. And that person is walking quickly. They look nervous. They match the description of the suspect provided by the 911 caller. And the officers make contact with them, detain him, put him in handcuffs. And about 10 minutes later, the person who was burglarized came over and said, that's not the person. So the cops got him. So they sued the police. All right? And the case was dismissed because of qualified immunity. I'll give you another example. Cornell versus Bills. On this particular occasion, the police are just driving around a public parking lot. And sometimes, I don't know if you know this, they just check license plates to see if a car is stolen. And that's what they were doing on this occasion. Somebody pulls into a spot, the officer runs the plate. Turns out the car is stolen. The officer, well, the license plate indicates the car is stolen. Officer pulls in behind the car, asks the driver to exit the vehicle, puts the driver in handcuffs, asks his partner to call the agency that reported it stolen and confirm that this is in fact the stolen car. Turns out it's not the stolen car. But the license plate had been stolen. So the officers let him go. He files suit claiming that he was wrongfully seized under the Fourth Amendment. And the court said, well, you know, we're going to give the officer qualified immunity under these circumstances. So what are good things about qualified immunity? Well, it encourages government officials to act without hesitation when confronted with a problem that requires a quick and decisive response. It ameliorates the concern that most people, myself included, and I'm sure a lot of police officers, would be reluctant to participate in public service in the absence of immunity. How many people would become police officers if there were no qualified immunity? I want you to think about that. And Dick, I would ask you because you were a police officer.
Yep.
If you thought you could lose your house because you arrested somebody who matched the description of the suspect, these are the kind of things I want you to think about. And how many police officers would aggressively pursue criminals if they were subject to personal liability? Take those two examples that I gave. You're a police officer, you're watching somebody who matches the description, and you have to go through the mental exercise as to whether or not I might be sued for putting this person in custody. Do you think that police officer is going to be aggressive under those circumstances? No. Criticisms of qualified immunity, and there are some, and I'm not discounting the criticisms. The first is that it was judicially created. It has no basis in either statutory law or the Constitution. Now, in Ohio, that's not the case. There is a statute that specifically addresses immunity for government officials. The second is that it provides a blank check to law enforcement officers to violate the rights of its citizens. And this is the crux of the dispute, which is that some people perceive qualified immunity as a protection to police officers who do bad things. And then lastly, it encourages over-aggressive police conduct and in certain circumstances can lead to death. Now, I want to put this in context for you. We all remember the George Floyd tragedy, and we all know that that police officer was found guilty of murder because he broke the law. But out of that George Floyd tragedy, there were two things that came out of it. The first was the defund the police movement, and we all remember that. And the second was a push to get rid of qualified immunity. And that's what this is connected to. It is connected to that. And I want to tell you the language, because, Your Honor, it's going to affect you as much as it's going to affect me. Creates a private cause of action for anyone whose rights are violated by a, quote, government actor, unquote. That government actor includes essentially any employee of the state or the local government. That would be me. That would be Judge Capelli. That would be every police officer in the city of Beavercreek. Don, that would be you. No government actor shall enjoy or may rely upon any immunities or defenses, which are only available to government actors or any subset thereof, including but not limited to qualified immunity, sovereign immunity, prosecutorial immunity, any immunity provided to the state, political subdivisions, or public employees by statute. And that would include judicial immunity. Now, the reason this is important, my wife told me, she said, you need to tread lightly, because this is going to sound self-serving. You're a prosecutor, and you're talking about something that's going to get rid of prosecutorial immunity. So it's going to look like you're just looking out for yourself. And I want to tell you that that's really not the case. So, because here's what you have to think about. Right now, most suits against government actors are handled in the summary judgment phase. So, if I'm a police officer, let's say I have that circumstance where I arrest somebody who matches the description, but I'm wrong. And that person goes. Right now, if you sue the police officer, that's not going to get past summary judgment because, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on civil pleadings, but somebody files a lawsuit, the other side answers and says, I have evidence, which is qualified immunity, and then the case goes away. Under the new regime, it's going to get past summary judgment every time. All right? Which means it's going to proceed forward to litigation. And without immunity, public employees are going to be spending less time doing their job and more time dealing with lawsuits. This will increase costs in a way that, frankly, we don't know. But it could be substantial. And the number, and I will tell you this, the number and quality of police officers and others may decrease significantly. And that's the danger of this law. Now, here's the status right now. I don't know if you read this, but the Supreme Court of the United States had to rule on this a few days ago because Dave Yost, who's the Attorney General, has been 8 times, he rejected the language, 8 times. And they took it to federal court, and a federal judge said, you have to accept the language. That decision went up to the Supreme Court, who decided they weren't going to review it, which means it stands. The Supreme Court didn't make a decision about it, they just said, we're not going to look at that decision. Right now, it is before the Ohio Ballot Board, and if accepted, the proponents of the constitutional amendment can begin collecting signatures. And if they get enough, it will be placed on the ballot likely in November. And what you need to remember, again, this is a constitutional amendment, so if it is enacted, the legislature cannot do anything about it. They can't change it. It will be enshrined in the law. And right now, Judge Capelli enjoys nearly absolute immunity for judicial decisions that she makes. And I enjoy almost absolute immunity for prosecutorial decisions that I make, deciding to charge somebody with a crime. Now imagine if every time I charge somebody with a crime, the person who has been charged sues me. Do you think that's going to impact my ability to do my job? Do you think it will impact Judge Capelli's ability to do her job? Yeah. So, This is David Hayes' opinion. That public education on the subject is important, and I will tell you that, and you need to, again, forget about me and no disrespect to the judge, forget about the judge, because where this is gonna matter the most is police officers on the street. It is the police officers on the street, so we're gonna be forced to make a decision every time they want to make an arrest as to whether or not I can be sued as a result of this action. And we don't want timid police officers. We don't want we don't want police officers who are bad, who break the law. I'm gonna tell you right now, in Green County, we don't have those. Okay? But we don't want timid police officers. And this is going to lead to that sort of timidity and affect public safety. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because I think I'm exactly on time. Yes. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so, Beavercreek Department just put out recently that all the posts they've been putting out on as far as like United by Suburban didn't increase the crime, but they're having increase the success rate of identifying people committing possible crime. Can you talk about how that has affected your side, like as far as the evictions or anything along those lines of people being identified on social media as committing crimes?
Well, I haven't crunched the numbers, but I'll give you one real world example so that everybody can get out of here. So I don't know if you know, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a shoplifting offense in the Meyer in Beavercreek. There were 2 women, one of whom was very pregnant, and they were putting property into a cart. And it's rather brazen. They well, I guess I shouldn't talk about the facts because one of you could be a juror on the case. So I'm going to stop talking about the facts. Bottom line is, I encourage people, we couldn't find one. We couldn't find one of them. So I encourage Beavercreek to put information out about this person so that we can find them, get them into custody. And the reason it was so important wasn't because shoplifting is, shoplifting happens. And you're not public enemy number one if you commit shoplifting. But in this particular case, in an effort to get away, she went into a vehicle. The police tried to stop her, and the officer was injured as a result. So that elevates it from a shoplifting to a robbery. So now we're talking about a second-degree robbery that carries a presumption of prison. And frankly, as long as I'm your prosecutor, that kind of nonsense is going to stay in Montgomery County. If it comes over here, we're going to do our best to make sure it doesn't happen. And we're going to communicate to people if you do it here. And there will be consequences. So it does help. Overall, sir.
On a lighter note, the latest criminal law changes that talked about. Does the Tesla burning law called as a felony apply to Ohio?
You talking about federal law?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not, I mean, you have felony vandalism in Ohio. So if you can't destroy people's stuff, regardless of how self-righteous you are in your beliefs. You don't have a law specific to, it's not domestic terrorism in the state of Ohio, it's vandalism to destroy somebody else's property. And if the damage exceeds a certain amount, then we can prosecute it as a felony. Hasn't happened to you, has it?
I don't have a Tesla.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your time. Thank you, David. And as always, we do a book dedication for our speaker, and we go in the library here. So I think we'll capture David's future here. This is what is the Supreme Court. Next week's meeting will be at the Green County Career Center. And we out there, we have provided the food, and I think David Jeskins will be speaking to us that night. Our greeters, Jenny Jarvie and Tim Cusack. Keep your eye on the upcoming events from the Beavercreek Rotary.com on Facebook. Anything else for the good club? So please stand.
568.
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
So. Good gentlemen, have a nice week. See you at the Williams hearing. Hail and flies and the plane.
But that's, at that, we're only got 20 here. Thanks. But it's like, oh, yeah, we're still. Again, but it's possible, Not very good. Too much. But you just what it is. Yeah, we need to. Yes. I know. Yeah, now over your voice. No. Pretty good. Yeah, I understand. Yes, there are. So, you know, we're not. Yeah, so very, very. That's a columnist. We can get up in the bottom of you know, that's it. Let's look one of this, so let's move on this way. That's all I really, yeah. I mean, you know, we're gonna have a fire break. And when anyone finds those three, there's a two, possibly, you know. Three minutes. Here, 5 minutes. So we're starting to before it's in where's the balance. Listen, he lost like that. Scared again. Well, he looks at. So I maybe that. So it's still be short. Credit on pretty random. Yeah, okay. You know the seat for public contract. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think you can change the nice for you. Right, that's it's like that. Yeah, it's very sketchy. It's his property, doesn't matter. I can find him, I can find him. Sweet. What's he talking? It's very much, it's looking right now. I remember pursuing that. I saw that, yeah, I tried to. That's nothing. I do this for every dog. It's really act on it. I do that. And waiting for all. Such thing. Yeah, shut up, then. All right, I'll tell you. Sounds good. What you need. I'll tell you what you need. Yeah, really, nice speech. That was very informative. Very informative. What have you? Yeah. Cheese. Please, right there. What's that? Oh, yeah. Okay, so. What do you got? Man, I'm looking to say what? Yeah, I think the city was in school. It's been wow, I had a lot of fun. Don't feel me. That's a little first.
Is it on the table?
So that's next to the really county. But our students are about to figure out. But it's so fit, it's very great. What's my card? David Jones for the well, there you are. It's exactly the right. So I got to work. So you can hear, yeah. Okay, so like 1,000 of lives, you had here with the big secular presidents. He's like, because the good side of usually, so it's later. Yeah. So, Jesus. Yeah, here, maybe like to know from settlers, students, where they come at, so, you know, staying. Yeah, it's been that. The other side of it. I think that's be all on the possible. I don't know. Good at least, I think for a good gas, one is even regular or something like 20 and you already just the and I never care those friends are pretty concerned about second and I'm in your budget. Then some first off. So brand. And it's sort of sad or he's like. He was like, he was like. For something that's never started building that house agree to say that it's like city arrests and more small town or anything. It's so different. So shut up. That's why it's so reason that you live 9 months. Yeah, when you're boss, you got to have it first. Don't come, it's there. It's not great. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like because it seems starting. You know, change your big stuff. Look through across because you can get people are team keep on horse and hang on. This is works. We watch the first. It's the team there for students. You're so how they do